welcome to episode 9 of Apache Geode by Example. This one's a cool one because we're going to introduce Spring Data Geode. If you're not familiar with Spring, highly recommend checking it out. If you're building Java applications, it is a community of projects, guides that just make developing applications a whole lot easier. If you have never kind of experienced Spring or what Spring is, definitely check out Spring 1. It's a conference coming up in DC. Registration's still open if you want to attend in person, and I'm sure videos will be posted online after. So we're going to be looking at the most simple possible example of Spring Data Geode. Spring Data Geode extends the Spring Data project, and I'm no expert in this technology. I've been using it for a little bit now, and I gotta say it just makes working with Geode a lot more conducive to application development. And what we're going to be looking at specifically today with Spring Data Geode, we're looking at release 209. This is where you can find the Spring Data Geode project and a whole bunch of examples. The primary maintainer is John Bloom, and we're going to be looking at one of his examples here. And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg to everything that we're going to look at in coming episodes with Spring Data Geode. So what I've set up here, I have John's examples up here, and I also have gfish because although in this example here, there's a server component and we can do all our cluster configuration from programmatically here, but we're going to use gfish just because it's a tool that we've used in the past, and I don't want to jump in to the deep end too quickly, so we're going to use gfish to do our cluster configuration, and we're simply going to be looking today at the Spring Boot, the client application. So first things first, let's use gfish to start a locator like we've done dozens of times before. We'll call this locator, and we'll give it a bind address, just telling it to bind to localhost, because that's a good default. And that's going to spin up on the default port 10334. Now, while that's starting, we can start looking at this piece of code here. Now, this is a Spring Boot application. We're choosing this to be a client cache application, and we're going to pass in a locator for it to talk to understand what servers it should be talking to. This defaults to localhost in 10334. This can take a host and a port for your locators, but in this case we can just use the default. Now that that's going, let's start up a server. Let's pass in a name, and let's just call this server 1, and we have to tell it where our locators are, and our locator is on localhost, and we'll give it a port. Locators, there we go. And as that starts up, one thing you're going to notice as we're working with gfish here, we're not creating any regions. There are no regions here, no regions. So, but we have our locator and our server running. This enable entity to find regions. This will create our regions for us, and something I mentioned in previous episodes, regions are a way of modeling your data. Just as you would model your classes, mapping those straight to regions is a great practice. So Spring Data Geode will create our regions for us. So if we create a new class, boom, we got a region, and that all that complexity is abstracted away from us using Spring Data Geode. We're going to enable indexing and enable PDX. So we're going to be writing PDX and serializing that, sending it to the server. And all this is doing, it's a Spring Boot application in our main method that is going to start, and it takes a bunch of arguments. Now we have a customer repository interface that we'll look at here in a second. And on line 111, we create a new customer, and then we use the customer repository interface to save it. And that's going to actually put our object in to our cluster. Now, inside of the customer object, we just got to give it a few annotations saying this is a piece of data, and we're going to pass in a say this is mapped to the region customers. We're giving it a NOR constructor. And here's the coolest thing is we just have to add these annotations, and we're going to get OQL indices out the gate. We don't have to think about it, and it's just going to allow us to, it's going to index the object for us and allow our queries to work much faster. Here we have a customer repository. It extends the CRUD repository, and all we have to do is add this annotation at trace, and that's going to enable OQL queries with this. This will create an OQL statement for us, and we'll be able to see that in this example. So we've done a put. We have some assert statements that say, yes, this has indeed been put into the cluster, and then we're going to issue a query. And using the find by name like method that we have on our customer repository, it's going to create that OQL statement. It's going to select star from customers where the name is like dough. So we do another assert statement saying that those two things are equal, and we print it out. Now, if we run this, let's see what happens. And we were printing to standard, let's see. Did we get an error? Nope. So we can see that we saved our customer with ID 1 and John Doe. We issued our OQL statement here, and if we go back here, we can go to list regions. There we go. We also can pass in a query and see that that data was actually put where we think it's been put. So let's do a select count star from customer and see what that gives us. If I can write a valid OQL statement, and we can see that the result is 1. So hopefully this was a nice quick introduction to Spring Data Geode. We're going to be looking at this framework a lot more because it's really powerful, and it allows an application developer to focus on delivering business value to their customers and not having to worry about all of the tuning and configuration that you have to oftentimes when working with Geode. I'm really bullish on this technology, and I'm looking forward to talking about it a lot more. So until next week.